Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Okay, so tonight got a whole bunch of announcements and then a couple material design things that I wanted to go over, and then continue working on the theme brushes. For anyone following the repo on GitHub, you'll note that the 430 milestone is basically at like 98%, mostly because a bunch of the stuff that got thrown in there was already done anyway. But I do want to start kind of getting some releases prepped for the 5.0 release. But before we dive into that, a couple announcements, if I can remember how to use a mouse. First and foremost, there is a user group talk that I am speaking at coming up a week from Tuesday. It's on the 12th, October 12th. That's the day to remember. So it is entitled C# Coding Calamity. Effectively, I have written some of the worst possible code I could come up with. I tried to make it look as reasonable as possible, but then kind of went off the deep end. So just to give an idea of what I'm talking about here, just quick demonstration. I know I shared it out on my GitHub or GitHub Twitter. If you are interested, this is the code we will be discussing. It looks so reasonable, and then you start comparing this code to the output, and you realize how completely unreasonable it is. So, the talk will be recorded for those people who are perhaps unable to attend, and will get posted on Intellitek's YouTube. So, I can find it. I am good at this. Boom. So, if you want to catch the recording of the meetup there, there's also another recording of the Knowable Reference Types meetup that Mark and I did 2 weeks ago now. I was out sick the last week, otherwise it would have gotten probably posted a little quicker, but that is, I believe, expected to be posted sometime next week. So if you are interested, follow that YouTube channel. You will see it come live there. I will also be tweeting it out when it goes out as well. So if you are interested, this is both in person and online, so would love to see people there. Yes, Robert. I don't know if you just caught the announcement. .NET user group. If you haven't seen it, this was that. I'm doing a talk on that Coding Calamity repo that I think you were on the stream several weeks ago that I built. It's gonna be fun. I'm gonna do my best not to cackle the whole time through. Next, tomorrow is Hacktoberfest kickoff. So, the thread aboard. Oh dear heavens. Yeah. So, if you would like to get involved with open source and earn yourself a free t-shirt, this is a great way to do it. So sign up for Hacktoberfest. There are quite a few repos out on GitHub. All you have to do is open up 4 pull requests that are meaningful and get accepted. There are a lot of repos that very intentionally use Hacktoberfest as a time to popularize or encourage people to attack those like good first issue things. Even for non-coders, like the Microsoft Docs repo is participating in Hacktoberfest. And it is an awesome way to go and help out repositories and get a free t-shirt. So if you are interested, all the information, Hacktoberfest, DigitalOcean.com. I'm planning on my streams for the month of October to kind of center around Hacktoberfest and get cracking kind of in general. So there will be a bunch of those. Not entirely sure whether next week's stream is going to be introduction to Git or perhaps doing some pull request stuff, but we'll see. Up in the air. Okay, now on to the interesting stuff. So, material design in XAML. The last big item or I shouldn't say last big item, the current big item for getting out the next 4.3.0 release. So for a very long time, the repository has not standardized on its brush names, which has always annoyed me. I always got confused between material design body and material design paper and which one I was supposed to use when, and it annoyed me to no end. Those were based upon early versions of the material design spec. They've since abandoned that naming scheme themselves. This library just has never updated to do it, mostly because it's a big breaking change. However, my plan is to introduce both the new names alongside of the old names until the 5.0 release to give people a chance to update. And then hopefully by the 5.0 release, I'm just going to delete all the old names. So that way there's some buffer period, ideally some good docs. Some of these need to be updated, and we'll go over that here in a moment. But hopefully this standardization of the naming makes it a lot easier for people to, one, find the brushes that they're looking for, and two, I want to expand the brushes, because there's been a lot of issues about, hey, I want to toggle this color or that color, or I want to control this individually, and there's never been a good way to do it. And it hasn't been clear on how to introduce new brushes because there's not been a clear way of setting that up. So I'm kind of trying to kill two birds with one stone here and hopefully make all of that work rather nicely. So this is the one that I have been going on, and there's an open PR that's just did I not link it? There it is. Nope. This is there's some other issues that are related to it. Did I not link my own PR to this? That was dumb of me. Hang on. There's an open PR for this. Oh, look at that. I did not link it. How about fixes? Boom. How about, actually, I don't want it to auto close it. I think that's probably why I didn't. First set of changes for boom. Or at least that way it's linked. So there's quite a few changes here, and I kind of want to go over. One of the most important changes is rather subtle, but let's take a look at it here real quick. So there's been at least a few different ways of setting up the theming in the library for a while, and my preferred method is with the bundled theme or the custom color theme like this, because it's very easy. There's some enum properties on this custom resource dictionary, makes it easy to set it up and get rolling. You can do the fancy color adjustment stuff. It's awesome. It's great. Worked wonderful. The problem with this is you don't get XAML IntelliSense, because these bundled themes added the resources in code behind, and so the XAML interpreter had no way of knowing what resources were going to be there. This is being fixed. So down here, you will note I have made a resource dictionary, but I have attached a code behind file to it, because normally if you just do new resource dictionary, you don't get the code behind file. But you can actually attach a code behind file to any resource dictionary with the X class and just point it at the appropriate class. This is the same way like when you do new window. If you look at what it generates, you get something like this. And then constructor with initialized component. And actually, let's expression body that guy. Great, done. Could I request a topic switch perhaps? All the fun going on with Azure these days, like O365, AD, Federated Service, etc. Wow, Robert, you picked only a few small things. Could you narrow it down a little bit? Because all the fun stuff going on in Azure is kind of broad. But yes, I am happy to deviate. Because there is quite a bit of stuff going on. Oh, all the security breaches. Oh, dear heavens. Okay. Sure. So let's... So I think one of the big one, Microsoft, Cosmos, breach, notebooks. I don't know exactly. Yeah, this was... I think this, yeah, the Chaos DB. So this one came out, as you can see on this one, August 27th. It was end of last month. I don't recall exactly which. But basically what happened is the inside of Azure for Cosmos DB, there was a feature that was enabled called Notebooks, which is a wonderful idea of a feature. And that it gave you a nice, easy way to kind of interact with your database, test out some code, back and forth. However, some security researchers realized that with a simple switch of an ID, they could jump from their database to anyone else's. Oh, find me a link to that Active Directory one. That one I haven't read up on, Robert. But for the Cosmos one, the key thing to know is Microsoft claimed to contact everyone who would have been affected by this. So it would have only been people who had either created a Cosmos, and don't quote me on these dates, created a Cosmos DB account after February of this year, or had turned on the notebook feature for Cosmos DB. Those were, according to Microsoft, the only people that would have been theoretically exposed here. Microsoft also said that they had contacted everybody that they thought was exposed and gave them a heads up to go through and cycle their access keys, because ultimately that was what happened. Is using the notebook feature, they were able to gain access to your access key to your Cosmos DB, which is the keys to the kingdom. With somebody's Cosmos DB access key, that's the thing that you treat like the password that you keep under lock and key and don't share ever, because it gives somebody free reign to run rampant on your DB, which is not a great thing to have exposed. So I know several of our clients, we went through and did a standard key rotation on all the Cosmos DBs, even though we weren't supposed to be one of the clients that were affected. Just for paranoia's sake, we cycled all the keys. So when in doubt, underneath your Cosmos DB, the access keys section, there underneath each of your keys, there's a little button there to cycle it. Go through and cycle it. And this is also a good opportunity to bring up the idea of, just because you're in Azure, the whole idea of making sure that you've got a good remediation approach for when these types of breaches happen. Microsoft's not going to build that for you. That's something you have to build into your own application. Because obviously, if you go and cycle that key and some other app is using that key, you have now broken that app's connectivity to its database. That is not good. There are many ways around this, managed identity being an easy one, because then there are no keys at play. It's much easier to deal with. You don't have to worry about passwords and that kind of thing because there are no passwords. So that is one option, but obviously you have to set your application up to work that way and make sure that that is all set up. So when in doubt, make sure you've got a good remediation plan for when these types of things happen, because I think the short answer is this type of stuff is always going to happen. And so that is on you to make sure that you build that out. Okay. And then let's take a look at this one, because this one I have not seen yet. Active Directory Federation Services. Oh, so this one's a little older, April. Oh, and this one's okay. At least they're only gaining a smaller amount of this. This isn't I take your AAD account. Single, okay. Federated Services. However, attacks identified to exchange online messages. Oh, hello. I appreciate you looking for a good one. However, agree to take your credentials privately. Oh, that's bad. Via token sign. Oh, can generate arbitrary XAML tokens to access federated as any user and even bypass MFA authentication. Oh, that's bad. Wow. Yeah, well, yes, I agree. Anything that allows you to effectively impersonate a user or gain creds is just like, it's scary in and of itself, but then once you are able to usually sidestep from one service into the other stuff, because you can imagine if you'd get like a network admin creds, what then that gives you access to, and the amount of damage you can run rampant. I mean, these types of attacks are a beautiful example of why people, or specifically security teams, advocate for least permissions. It's not how much you trust your people, because you could have a company filled with awesome people that you absolutely trust. But if something happens, possibly through no fault of your own, where one of those accounts gets compromised, and the attacker is then able to take that compromised account and just run rampant through all of your stuff, that's bad. Like, I've heard people actually try to use the argument, oh, well, we trust our people, it's fine. It's like, I don't care how much you trust them. It's not how much you trust your own people. It's how much you trust the attacker that compromises their account. It's that person you shouldn't trust at all. And so making sure that people have the minimum permission necessary. Like, it definitely annoys me on some of the clients that we go through with all of the security hurdles, and some of them feel completely meaningless, but most of them are at least well-meaning intentions to mitigate the risk of something like this happening. Okay. So this first bullet point for mitigating it, I would kind of hope that people were already doing this already. I mean, typically with firewalls, the general rule is deny everything and only open up as small a hole as possible in your firewall to either, say, well-known servers that you know, and as few ports as possible. I mean, this is typically how we lock down most firewalls, so that's okay, sure. Okay, even better. Don't use the unsecured port and just go through 443, which I assume is going to be like HTTPS, so secured. Inbound communications can be delivered by making some firewall configuration changes. Alerts can be set for policy so to detect this sort of attack behavior. Great. Right, yeah, so 443 HTTPS and 80 is HTTP. Yeah, and this is the other one that people often forget about is supply chain attacks. So making sure that you actually audit everything that you're dependent upon, because this is actually one thing that people often forget is, it's very easy, and we often take for granted how easy it is to pull in dependencies. And if a downstream dependency gets compromised, you may be doing everything right, but then that dependency gets broken, and now you're vulnerable because of that. So it is worth making sure that there is reasonable auditing and reasonable scanning of this kind of stuff. And Robert, you would be a good one to ask. I've actually contemplated doing a stream where I basically go through and stand up like a very simple like ASP.NET Core web API, deploy into Kubernetes, maybe have it connect to a SQL database, managed identity, all of that works in setting it up, because what I've at least seen so far is you can find tutorials for like small pieces, but there's only so much out there, and I've never really found a good end-to-end one. Let's see, what kind of reasonable trust do we put on NuGet, especially with everything going to NuGet? Yeah, so like a lot of places that I work at, there's a reasonable amount of trust, but what typically happens is if you can assume that the library is reasonably following semantic versioning, quite often what happens is the policy is set such that there should be a security review of dependencies for at least major versions. And then it could depend a little bit on the publisher or whatnot, but occasionally also minor version revs as well. with the expectation that you're always updating to get the revision changes, that third digit, because those ones are typically your security patches. But then if a library was going to say add a dependency or similar, that should be a major revision change. And so making sure that somebody has at least had eyes on it and evaluated it, because it's really hard. Like, you can go through something like Veracode scanning or similar to try and find problems and notify you if you're using something that's vulnerable. The other thing, and this actually, Quartz.net for the longest time. Why did they hate Quartz.net? What is it called? Dependabot, I think is what it is. So, and actually, if you are out on, it's not, what is the other one? It's not Dependabot. GitHub does security scanning. What is the name of that thingy? No. About GitHub Advanced Security. So if you are actually hosting your stuff on GitHub Enterprise, because they didn't understand it, GitHub actually does a pretty good job of scanning your code, and especially for dependencies with vulnerabilities. Like Dependabot, what it will do is it'll look through your repository. So they actually prioritize and look at what dependencies you're taking. So that means GitHub has to be able to look into a repo based upon the language and framework you're using, know about how your package manager works. So for C# NuGet, goes through and will scan packages, and it gets updated and notified when there are security vulnerabilities in packages, and it will actually send you pull requests. And the pull request that Dependabot sends for, say, updating a dependency when there's a known vulnerability, not everyone can see that pull request. So there's actually a visibility scope on pull requests that these built-in scanners get to use. So only people with write permission on the repository can actually see those pull requests. So it doesn't necessarily broadcast to the world, hey, there's a vulnerability in your repository. You just get this quiet pull request that comes in that only your users can, or your users with write permission can see, and then they can review it and update. And hopefully, if you've got CI/CD turned on, or at least CI to check the PR coming in, you can validate, oh yeah, okay, this new version of the library doesn't break anything, accept PR, merge it in, vulnerability fixed, which is awesome. The other thing that they have is for like code scanning and secrets. They can actually detect with a reasonably high degree of accuracy if somebody accidentally checks in a secret into your source code, because that's bad, right? You can go back and rewrite Git history, but oftentimes what really needs to happen, you need to cycle that secret, because it is remarkably impressive how fast these bots that scan GitHub looking for secrets can find someone's mistake and exploit it ridiculously fast. So the moment that's discovered, you really need to be cycling those keys. On a lot of the popular ones, GitHub actually goes a step further. So like, say you check in your AWS key for something, they can, if GitHub can actually detect that that is an AWS key, they will actually send a request over to AWS, disable that key, and send you a notification saying, hang on, you checked something into a public repo. And I should clarify, public repo, not private. Private, GitHub kind of goes, well, this is private, this is kind of on you, we don't know what you're doing, it's probably private for a reason, etc., etc. But public repos, if they see it, they'll actually try to shut it down and cause that cycle to occur on you right away to prevent anyone from being able to exploit it and compromise your stuff. So if you host in GitHub and specifically are able to take advantage of some of these code scanning and Dependabot stuff, this stuff is awesome. And it's remarkably good. Sorry, I did see your question, Robert. I just got on a tangent and kept going. What code scanning tools would you recommend? Ooh, boy. So that gets hard. And We were actually having a discussion about this in the office today, specifically trying to figure out what is a kind of a generic way of doing um, effectively like security auditing of software and what would be the appropriate thing to do. And it's really hard to give generic recommendations because so much depends on exactly um, yeah, unfortunately these tools bots are not on Azure DevOps. I agree, but remember also what I said though is the GitHub tools are primarily targeting public repositories and enterprise ones. So they aren't going after your private repos. And Azure DevOps tends to not be a place for public repos. They tend to be more internal. Obviously you can make them public, but typically that's not the way people are sharing code. So it's a to some degree in my mind it almost makes a little more sense that they would go a little more hands off on DevOps. But for what it's worth, you are correct. But there is quite a bit of stuff going into the GitHub, um, just as one more good reason why you should host stuff on GitHub, because it's awesome and wonderful. Where was I going? Oh, so generic tools for doing scanning. So let me think. I mean, the GitHub stuff, if you're looking for something for a public repo that's free, is good. I don't know if there's a lot of tools I could say that I've used and would recommend that are free. Like I know, so like Veracode is obviously a very popular one, and it does depend a little bit on what type of scanning you're looking for, because there's kind of a large breadth of areas where you almost need to evaluate what you're building and what type of vulnerabilities you're looking for. So something that scans code is going to be looking for either, bad coding practices, vulnerable dependencies, accidental secret checks in, security vulnerabilities, code smells. Yeah, so you're specifically going for code scanning level stuff. Um, what would be? So honestly, the GitHub stuff would be the first one I would go for. The Veracode for like a paid solution does a fairly good job of scanning and looking for vulnerabilities. Code smells, you're not really going to land in security software type stuff for most of that. A lot of times those are going to come down to more like your coding practices type situations. I'm trying to think of what would be the sorry, I'm trying to look through my list of tools to see if I'm missing anything that I should be calling out. Yeah, Endepend is definitely a good one. That would go through and do it. To some degree, a lot of the JetBrains products. So if somebody's using either Writer or ReSharper, they can help do it. Endepend is really good at catching like duplicated code and poor coding practices, and to some degree a lot of security vulnerabilities come down to poor coding practices to begin with. Things that start as just messy code that then propagate into something worse, right? Like those types of things tend to be like it doesn't occur nearly as much in the C# realm, but like the buffer overflow exceptions tend to be ones that get abused all the time, where where somebody's code isn't appropriately bounds checking, and you're able to, run off the end of the buffer and get access to things that you shouldn't be able to. Which those types of things often start as poor coding practices that then propagate forward. So I think, yeah, Endepend is one that I have used, and I should actually get that installed in VS 2022 since I do have a license to it currently. I've not played with it in a while. I need to do that again. I have a stream a while back, Robert, where I think, I don't know. Let me pull this up. I'm pretty sure if I do yeah, I was on the stream. Yeah, this guy though. For anybody else watching this later. So I do have a stream where they Endepend sent me a license to go through and use and play with it. It is remarkably good. So to their credit, it is very good software. I specifically like that it does, unlike a lot of stuff that can slow down your development flow, it doesn't. Mostly because it's intended to be typically run in a pipeline is where I would usually leverage it, just to be able to get those metrics and make sure that you're always pushing forward. Because one of the things that it does is it tries to get basically a benchmark of here's where you're currently at. Right? We've got all of these recommendations of stuff you can fix. You've got all this code debt. You've got this, that, and that problem. And oftentimes on big repos, you just can't ingest all of that at once. Like, nobody's going to pay for you to spend 8-10 weeks fixing all of these issues. And there is some diminishing returns when you get near the top too. But it does the benchmark and then just always basically tries to keep you moving forward. So as long as you're moving in a positive direction, that's what's important, rather than trying to bite off everything at once. And so I really appreciate that about it, rather than a lot of tools that try to say, hey, let me update this problem everywhere in your code base. It's like, no, please don't do that. That would be horrible. I do not want to ingest that kind of change right now. Maybe you do. If you're able to do that, awesome. That's even better. But most of the time, especially in large repos, you can't just ingest wholesale changes willy-nilly. That ends up getting to be highly problematic. What else, Robert? Are there any tools you use that I haven't mentioned that are worth looking at? One other one that I'll call out. What is it? Roslinator. Where's the website? Yeah, this one here. So specifically in terms of like Visual Studio C# analyzers, Roslinator has quite a few of them. And specifically around trying to be as helpful as possible. And these ones tend to be a lot of community driven. And so, let's see, analyzers. So you can see how many of them are in here and written up. Oh, SonarQube, yes. So that is one. So I will say I use SonarQube indirectly. So I work on projects that have set up SonarQube. I don't actually ever use it. I've never set it up myself. But again, another good one for actually going through and trying to do that code scanning to look for security vulnerabilities or errors that could cause you problems. There are some other ones too that are here, I'll call out this one as well. So Salt Security, and again, this kind of, and with a lot of this security stuff, it really comes down to knowing what you're scanning at what level and why. So this one takes a different approach to it. This does not attack it at the code level. So this is downstream. Obviously, with the whole idea of shifting left, the earlier you can catch it in the development process, the better. But there are some things that are difficult to catch at the code level, because it may not be apparent that, oh, you're accidentally leaking out this PII type information, right? So somebody's social is being leaked out of an API that wasn't intended or similar, right? That's bad. This takes the intent of scanning the running APIs, to try to give you that kind of context of looking at what's happening while your API is running, and try to look for those vulnerabilities that could come in at runtime against your API. So that's the SALT security stuff that has been set up. So I do have some experience setting this up and running this. It's pretty good. I question the word every here, because anyone who claims they can do everything is probably lying to you and a bit of marketing ease, but it is a reasonable thing. But again, we've now shifted from the developer code area and more into like an ops level scanning type thing, because there are plenty of software things that'll like scan your Docker images, for example, and that kind of thing. And again, that's now a little bit further right of the development process, and we're now getting into your DevOps land, which it is worth having those gates and those checks there. But if you can catch it early, that's obviously better. So something worth to take into consideration. And then obviously all the way even further over, you've got your IDS, your intrusion detection systems, for looking for like ongoing attacks and that kind of thing. And that's usually in your InfoSec realm of trying to catch things while running. So with Cosmos DB breach, wow. How about keeping database and data encrypted at rest? Is it a necessity, or is it okay to keep data unencrypted at rest? So the Cosmos DB breach wouldn't have mattered either way, because with that breach, they were able to compromise access keys, which meant you could come in looking like a legitimate connection, which is unfortunate. And with the Cosmos DB stuff, the other thing to keep in mind is a lot of Azure services, like specifically like SQL servers and key vaults and those kind of things, typically also have kind of their own access firewall type policy, where you can say you have to be an approved user, but also from like this VNet or this set of approved IPs. So oftentimes those things are even more locked down, so they aren't, even though they may look like they're publicly accessible, their access policies are going to significantly limit them to, only allowed sources. So you kind of have to not just compromise the key, but a little bit more than that. The idea with the data encrypted at rest is effectively like, you can imagine if you were writing the C#, when you go to actually save the data off to a disk, and it's sitting there on disk rather than, say, loaded in memory. So when it's at rest, you can imagine the disk sitting there. The big idea with data at rest is if somebody's able to get access to that data or get access to that hard drive. You could imagine if, in the case of, say, virtual machines, where somebody's able to get access to maybe the VHD file, so the virtual hard drive image. If they were able to take that and take it somewhere else and load it up on their own VM, could they gain access to that data? If it's encrypted at rest, ideally, no, they shouldn't be able to break the encryption to get it out. But if it's unencrypted, all bets are off, right? Like I remember when I was very young, very little, I would do kind of on the side computer work for people, and quite often people would have issues where they locked themselves out of their computer, they were sending it off, or something had gone wrong, it had crashed, and they're like, oh, but I didn't back up my precious pictures of my dogs, I need you to save those, that kind of thing. And one of the simplest things I did is I spent $10, bought a simple little wire that you plugged into the hard drive, connected up to a USB port, and then I just copied all the data off. Why? Because at least back in like the Windows XP and earlier days, data was almost never encrypted at rest. And it meant that I could plug in that hard drive and pull all the data off. Now with like BitLocker and that kind of thing, oftentimes data is now encrypted at rest, and it's not as easy to be able to just backdoor into that hard drive and grab it. So going back to your question, is it okay to keep data unencrypted at rest? I would say not if it can be avoided. So most of the time, and especially in a lot of these cloud-based services, you'll note that they will typically advertise when the data is encrypted at rest, because that is very much an advanced kind of selling feature type thing. So yeah, I would say, is it okay to keep data encrypted at rest? And I would say not if there's an alternative. If there is any possibility of ensuring that data is encrypted at rest, and that doesn't necessarily mean you encrypt it inside of your software. Oftentimes, like I said, in a lot of like the SaaS type solutions, it will handle it for you, of doing that encryption, using like either the machine key or whatnot in order to do that. So those types of things typically should be transparent to you as a software developer. But if you can avoid keeping it unencrypted, definitely do so. There's definitely horror stories on Hacker News and whatnot where, something was left unencrypted at rest. Some server was, decommissioned, but left running, didn't get updates, got compromised, somebody stripped off, this database, and you see all those data breaches where it's like, oh yes, if you were our customer 8.5 years ago, by the way, your data's now been compromised. Great. Thanks, guys. Where did you leave my data unencrypted somewhere? Because that's typically what that means. Good questions, Robert. You've seriously distracted me. Okay. I think I'm going to go back to the material design stuff. Unless you got more questions. I don't mind questions. I definitely don't mind deviating, especially if it's interesting. HaveIBeenPwned.com. Yes. And actually, what is his name? The guy who runs the site, Troy something. Hang on. Troy, what is it? Troy Hunt. That's what it is. He always posts lots of good stuff about various data breaches. But it's actually remarkable. He's got a lot of blog posts about the runnings and the upgrades. The amount of traffic that he is able to handle as effectively, not completely, but as a solo guy running this is pretty impressive. He is remarkably good. So, especially loading up all of this information and the speed of which, because you can imagine the number of queries and whatnot that go into here. There's quite a few governments even that he's gotten set up for basically checking. So, like in a lot of cases, if you go to like log into one of your accounts and says, hey, by the way, this account's been compromised, oftentimes they're using a service, probably not unlike this, right? Going through his API for getting, who's using it? Android apps, iOS apps, Python libraries, websites, others. Yeah, so just a couple people. Have you been pwned? Yes. And I'll admit some of them have been in here. However, one of the nice parts is you can set up this notify me, which is remarkably good. And all this does is if he ends up receiving a data breach that contains your information, you basically just get an email saying, hey, here's a link, you can come in and see the data breach. He obviously doesn't publicize out like the breach passwords and whatnot, but it lets you know that was exposed, and the types of data that was exposed. and you should immediately go and change your credentials. Fun story, I actually got notified of a breach and an attack against one of my emails on my wedding day. That was not the time when you want to be dealing with somebody trying to, because it was, I got the notification from Have I Been Pwned like early that morning or something. And then later that day, because obviously I'm prepping for a wedding, I am not paying attention to email. I start getting two-factor auth requests for my email, and I went, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, that was not good. Ashley, I know he changed things up with the whole Ashley Madison breach. I am not familiar with that story. What got changed up? I know he's added plenty of stuff in here, but like you can see some of the recently added ones. When he ingests data, it's not exactly small numbers. But you can go in here and search for your emails or your domains of that kind of thing. Oh right, because that was the breach where people were not wanting their data shared for obvious reasons. Got it. Yeah. Yeah, but definitely. So one, I would recommend signing up for this Notify Me, and even if you don't, periodically just give a quick check to see. The better thing to do, by all means, one, turn on two-factor auth everywhere you possibly can. Hint Netflix, I want two-factor auth. And where you can't, a password manager is wonderful, because then if an account gets compromised, it's a single account with a single password. Obviously, if that's an email, there's the potential for that to spiral a little bit bigger, but at least making sure you limit the scope of it. For people familiar with the icons, you can see in the corner here, I favor Bitwarden. It's a nice one that is free. And it, at least under the free tier, I can share passwords with my wife back and forth, which is wonderful. That way, when I change the Netflix password, she doesn't have to come questioning what it is. What would be one you recommend? So, I personally use Bitwarden, but there are lots of good ones out there. LastPass I've used in the past, and it is an excellent one. Yeah, I would say pick one that works well for you. And a lot of them have like either like family tiers or that kind of thing, and they're definitely worthwhile if you have a bunch of people in your household that you need to, I will say, securely share credentials with. Obviously, sharing credentials is typically a no-no. Like, you don't give your password to somebody. However, for example, the Netflix password at my house is available to both my wife and I. That is a very reasonable thing, right? You share the Netflix password. Yes, but I share it with other people in the household, which I believe is still within the terms of use. We still only have like 2 machines that access Netflix. It's the computer and then the TV downstairs. Can I move in? Robert, I am not adding you to my Bitwarden organization. But I would definitely say whatever password manager you go with, I would suggest picking one of the main ones that also has mobile integration. So a mobile app that you can use. Because it is an absolutely metric pain in the butt if you've got a nice secure password generated by your password manager, and then you pick up your phone and you have to try and type that sucker in. That's miserable. Don't do that. So pick any of the reasonable password managers that also have mobile integration, so that you can use it on your phone as well as your thing. It's also really helpful for when it comes time to say you need to cycle a password, because you get that unfortunate email that says, hey, by the way, this account's been compromised, or heaven forbid, I'm still trying to get some family members from doing this, that you use the same password for multiple things, and then that password gets compromised. You now have to change all the things. And most of the time people don't, and that's bad. That's very, very, very bad. So I encourage you, password manager. All the password managers are going to have some sort of like master key to unlock the vault. This should not be a short password. Password complexity goes up significantly with length over complexity. So some people get really fancy with like, I'll replace letters with symbols and numbers and that kind of thing. That's good, but the number of permutations goes up more by just adding another letter or symbol onto the end than just adding complexity. Don't waste time with complexity. Go long. I recommend sentences. They don't even have to be things that make sense, but just like a sentence or a phrase or something that you can remember or whatever, right? Like that is perfect. You can throw some numbers and symbols in there and have fun with it, but something long is good, because remember, your password manager vault password should be used only there, never shared. That should be under lock and key. Don't lose that, because yeah, like Robert says, rainbow tables can cover most passwords up to like length 15 or something ridiculous, right? So for people unfamiliar with rainbow tables, they're basically so how passwords work is you type in your password, it runs it through a hash algorithm, and then it compares that output hash with the stored one to see if it's correct or not. Most hashing algorithms are slow by design, because if you're able to hash a lot of things quickly, it means that you can brute force your way through a lot of things. The problem is there's a lot of time involved in that. Rainbow tables are basically things that have been built by people brute forcing passwords through those password algorithms and storing the results. And so then it just basically becomes a database lookup of, do I know this hash? Yes, that goes back to this password. Boop, and I'm done, right? Don't do that. The problem is as things get long, the complexity of building those brute force tables becomes astronomical and harder to do, and current computing power isn't going to do something that's, 32 characters long or something massive like that, because the number of possible permutations is insane. So, long password, make it something you can remember. Do not share, do not reuse, ever, 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 ever. Because even like your master password, you don't necessarily have to share that with somebody if they're like part of your password manager org or whatever. But you can share the contents of your vault. That is better. So, for what it's worth. Even with perfect chain permutations, yeah. Absolutely, Robert. So, yes, and I am still a little bitter that Netflix does not support two-factor auth. It is shocking to me in this day and age when you have effectively auth as a service. Like people like Auth0 will sell you reasonable auth as a service. It's not hard. Integrate. Done. And yes, Mountain Dew. Oh, fun story. Okay, so I'm on a roll. Mountain Dew, what was it called? Flaming Hot? Mountain Dew released a... Yes. Mountain Dew released a limited run of these things. And you can look them up on eBay to see how much people who got a hold of the limited run are selling them for. It's ridiculous. However, a good friend and colleague of mine got his hands on some and shared it with me. I will say this. I have still yet to meet a Mountain Dew that I did not like. I love them all. But this one, you're better off ignoring, because most people see the Mountain Dew logo and they immediately assume nice, carbonated, sugary beverage. And that is not what you're getting here. This is more akin to when you would get the, they did like the Mountain Dew juice, like the energy morning juice stuff. This is more akin to that. And then the Flamin' Hot is almost like what you get with a strong cinnamon, like hard cider type thing, where it's got that nice little burn at the end. It's more like that. That's more like what you're drinking. So throw away the nice sugary thing from what you would normally get with Mountain Dew. Very good. Not my favorite, but would definitely drink again. Say that. And I would not drink it in place of like a regular Mountain Dew where I'm wanting a nice sugary carbonated beverage. This is not your sugary carbonated beverage. This is more like something I would take with a meal when you want kind of, a spicier drink. Looks like the liquid pain. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But yes, was able to try it, and I saved the can because it's, I think, one of the few limited edition Mountain Dews I've drank. For whatever reason, when people find Mountain Dew, they always give it to me. I don't know why. They just assume that I love it and that I will happily drink it, which I definitely will. Okay, all of that, and I was coming back here. So one thing, and I don't know if you have strong opinions on this, Robert. Mountain Dew is your signature. I do tend to always have a Mountain Dew in my hand. I've seen the minivan. Yeah. So there was a local grocery store that made the mistake at one point in time of putting 2 liters on sale for 22 cents a 2 liter. And this was a long time ago, before I was married, when I was living as a bachelor with a few other guys in a house. We bought cartloads of 2 liters of Mountain Dew. We got laughed at one time because we were pushing, I think there were 3 of us, and we were pushing 5 carts out to the car. And it's the only time I was driving an old Suzuki Vitara, and the back of the Vitara, you could see, was noticeably sagging from the weight of all of that Mountain Dew just loaded through the back. Nerd. Yes, definite nerd. It was awesome. But because we had 2 liters of Mountain Dew for, I think it was close to a year. I'm trying to remember exactly how many. Thank you. I'm trying to remember how many we bought, but I think it was close to 200 or 300 2 liters of Mountain Dew. I remember it was like 3 days after we did it, we had some people over for like a movie night, and somebody asked me, they're like, "Kevin, do you have any Mountain Dew?" I nearly died laughing. I was like, "Walk out to the garage. It's sorted by color." Because we just, like, we took a corner of one of my, because at the time I was living in a house with dual 2-car garages, which was like, I had as much square footage in the house as I did in the garages. It was wonderful. We had taken a section of the garage and basically tapered it off and built this Mountain Dew pyramid out of the 2 liters. We had that many. It was awesome. Loved it. There was also a point where when Mountain Dew and Doritos were giving away Xbox Ones, I believe. I had a buddy that just bought a whole bunch of 2 liters just so he could get the codes to enter in the website to win the Xbox One. And after he had won his Xbox, because I don't remember how many he bought, tons. He's like, "I've got all this Mountain Dew." I'm like, "I'll take it. Don't worry." He's like, "Really? Do you want all of it?" I'm like, Yes, I will take it." I did learn something though. Once you break that seal on the 2 liter, it has a very finite shelf life. After about like 3 or 4 weeks, it will go bad once that seal's broken. So once you crack a Mountain Dew, you should consume it somewhat quickly. Like, I'd say under a week. Now me, usually a Mountain Dew, once it's cracked, it's not going to last a week. It's lucky if it lasts the day. I usually don't have it sitting that long, but when somebody else had cracked it, it was on a shelf life. So there was a time where I did have to throw away some Dew because, yeah, it goes bad. It does not taste good. It does not taste good at all. And you know when it's going bad because it'll first start to get like a really watery flavor. And what comes after the watery flavor tastes like mold. And then you should stop. Like, once you get to that watery point, that's like the last possible point where it's kind of okay to drink. And then you should be throwing it away. Theming brushes. Something theming brushes. So I was going to go through here. So the nice part is we now have nice IntelliSense on all this. But I was going to go through and start updating the library. I was actually contemplating going through and putting in a Hacktoberfest to see if somebody wants to write me a PowerShell script to automatically update people's code, because it's actually not terribly difficult to just go hunting through the XAML for all of somebody's like dynamic resources and just replace the keys. Most of these updates should be that simple. So I imagine a PowerShell script could be a really good 90% solution, for maybe even 100% for a lot of people. Okay, so underneath this new, I started putting all the new stuff underneath this new theming namespace. And so you'll note there is a lot of duplication between this and the stuff over here that I started tacking the word obsolete onto the files for what it's worth. Oh, and I'll actually throw this option out there as well. I put a thing out to a couple of my colleagues, but I will extend it out as well. If anybody is interested in doing Hacktoberfest and you would like to earn the t-shirt, you want to get your PRs in and you don't know where to start, if you are interested in pairing with me on a live stream, you can pick the repo, preferably C#. Don't care which one. I will pair with you to help you get your PRs in and get them submitted and done so you can earn a t-shirt for Hacktoberfest. So if that is interesting to anybody, again, you have to be willing to pair with me on stream and preferably pick a C# repo, and I will pair with you and we'll knock out 4 PRs, I imagine, in an evening, and you can earn your shirt. That'd be fun. Because I intend to have my PRs done in probably the next 24 hours. And if not the next 24 hours, this weekend. So, because my wife is leaving me home alone with the kids for the weekend. So I imagine the evenings after they go to bed, I will probably be submitting PRs. Probably. Likely. Okay, so this is this method here that I've buried underneath this theme manager is one that I've built to convert from the old iTheme into the new theme class. And so it's also serving as a convenient mapping. So if anybody wants to know what's the old name into the new name, this method I'm basically using as a place of keeping track of it. It's also how I'm going to make both of them work on their own, so that both theming approaches can be there. There's a couple things going on right now. Right now, the old theme manager calls into the new theme manager from one into the next, which is great, except for it's a one-way street. The old one calls the new one, but as soon as you update to the new one, the old brush names are going to stop working. So I want to fix that before I release as well, because I want people to be able to switch incrementally. And by saying, oh, you have to do all these things then switch, that just sounds like a recipe for disaster. But I've gotten it down to the point where there's only a handful of brushes left. These two I think I'm going to kill off completely, the divider and the selection brushes, in favor of making some specific ones to each control. Like you can see, I've already started separating things for, here's some data grid brushes, here's some drawer host brushes, and making these things specific to those, so that if somebody does want to make something more customizable in the future, it's hopefully more obvious where that brush goes and how that gets built out. So last night, I believe the buttons are where I left off. And so I was going to start with whatever control comes after the word button, which apparently is calendar. So we are just going to start running through these things. Dynamic resource. And here we go. So most of these get to be pretty simple. And the best part, Material design. You'll note I can now get nice IntelliSense, and because of the naming, it filters down where I'm going. So I want primary, done. And then if I want the foreground for that one, primary dot foreground. Oh, look at that. I can even remember my brush names. Isn't that wonderful? Okay, next. Okay, and this is the one that always bothered me, is I could never remember the difference between body and paper. In this case, it's clearly background and foreground. So, background, foreground. No thinky. Muchas better. Muchas better. Or at least my opinion is muchas better. But these are still very much up for debate. So if if you have strong opinions about what makes sense or what these things should be named, please feel free to leave feedback. This is wrong. We're going to fix that. You don't do styles as dynamic resources because those should be resolved once and not dynamically. And this is one of those cases where I'm tempted to make this into a control-specific brush, but I don't think I'm going to. I think for now I'm going to leave these things using the ones that they were doing before. But I do want to start separating some of these ones out and creating new ones. Thankfully, creating new brushes later is not a breaking change. There's a couple things that I very intentionally did, and this is actually worth calling out. So you'll note that the old class was an interface, this I theme. And the unfortunate part with it being an interface is an addition would be a breaking change. Sucks. I don't want that. Oh, oops. Sealed. Boom. Oh, I can't make you sealed, can I? Oh, that's right. That's right. I wanted to seal this class so that nobody could inherit from it. But what I did do is I made the constructor internal because there are a couple derived class, and then I sealed the derived classes. Just to make them easy. And I still need to move all of these things up here and have them set the appropriate brushes and all of that jazz. Haven't done that yet. Haven't done it yet. I've got to-dos all over this code base. It is currently a mess. So this is going to be a very big change, and so I'm likely to merge this in and then let it sit for a while in the preview releases, because I know we've got several users that pull down the preview NuGet packages and try them out, and I'd like to get feedback from people if there's any breakages, because this should work without breaking everybody. So should work. If it doesn't, it's a bug and we should fix it. Okay, so there's that. There's that. Okay. And calendar's done. See how easy that was? And then we just continue down the path. Dynamic resource. Really? Did I already do this one? Look at that. That one's done. Next. What are we on to now? Checkbox. Oh, I may have done this one too. Dynamic resource. So I'm just hunting all of these to go through and see if they are using the old one. And it looks like this one has largely been updated. Done. Anything that's... I'm basically looking for anything that's not material design dot. Because those would be all of the... Oh, so these ones need to be converted. So I only got most of these. So let's see. Body. Wait, why do these both use the same foreground and background? Huh. Interesting. material design. They both want the background brush, so we'll put that in both. And then this one, I think we already converted. Yeah, chip background, so that's already done. Material design, brushes. Chip. Oh, brush, not brushes. That's why I'm not getting filtering. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, so I really didn't finish this, did I? Okay. So let's see. Background. I should actually just copy this. Paste. Chip background. Let's see. Background. I'm actually really terrified that I've made mistakes on here somewhere. Oh, wait. Body isn't supposed to be background, is it? No, it's paper. This is foreground. Now I have to go back and check my changes because now I'm wondering if I made a mistake. And the only reason I know that is because there is a light foreground, which I'm not happy with this name. I thought about doing foreground light. I don't know what to do about it. Okay, hold on real quick. I want to check this guy. Let's turn up our zoom so everyone can see view changes. So we are on checkbox. So did we mess any of these up? See, we did mess these up right here. Let's see. Edit file 257 to foreground. Okay. Boom, boom. So that should be from body to foreground. Chip background, that's fine. Body. See, I messed up another one here too. Oh. So line 400. I want to go to line. That's what I want. Get cracking. Let's see. Foreground. So that's foreground, chip background. It is shocking to me that this was border brush, not background. So the background is light and the border brush is foreground color. Okay. At some point I think these will change into resource specific brushes, but not today. So body, right? So this is boom, foreground, divider, and this is where I think I need to go and create a separate one. So we're gonna come back to that in just a minute since we're almost at the bottom. Boom, boom. Okay, so what is this being used for? Is checked. So it's going to set the border brush to the divider. So what style are we in here? Chip outline. So we are on chip outline, and we are also only on the chip outline when we are checked. So let's go and make a new one. Chip outline checked border gets old theme divider. So that's basically the way I've been handling this, is building ones out like this. Take me there. Nope. Boom. there's that, and then we come over here. So it needs to be done now in 3 places. So the conversion from the old theme, the new theme needs to set it up. So we're going to go boom, boom. So this ends up being outline check border, boom. Then we come down to the read on the other side, which I clearly just scrolled past. Get theme, and then this is chip, boom, outline check border, comma there. Okay, so that gives us a new brush. It's not currently going to exist inside of the resource dictionary for IntelliSense, but that is okay. I've got a unit test that will cover it later. So perfect. That handles checkboxes. Okay, chips. I think chip I already did. Nope, I did not do chip. Okay, so let's go here. There. Sorry, chip background. So chip background, and then this was primary, and this is primary foreground. Boom, boom. That one's done. See, just gonna burn through these as fast as possible. Okay, so body, so that's going to be foreground. Next. This is primary. Oh, I don't have Karnak running. Turn that on. Let's see. Primary foreground. Light foreground. Light foreground. Is that really? Sorry, I'm now questioning everything I know. Clock. Body light. Yeah. Let's see here. So primary, 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 primary for, nope, nope, nope. Primary foreground, and then this becomes secondary, secondary foreground, background, let's see, primary light, primary, primary foreground, and see, primary light, primary, I guess I can actually just use the search button. Let's see, primary, primary foreground, primary foreground, primary light, primary, primary, primary. It's one of those cases where I really wish that I had a bunch of XAML tests for this, because it would give me a lot of confidence in this change if I had those set up, but unfortunately not all of them exist. There are some, but not enough to give me a lot of confidence. Enough to give me just enough confidence to merge, which is the right amount of crazy. Oop. Lost my paste buffer. Let's see, primary light, primary, let's see, foreground, let's see, light foreground, primary, primary, foreground, let's see, light foreground, primary, primary, foreground. You wouldn't do that. Light foreground. Like, it keeps moving focus up to here, and I don't want that. Like, I want to just jump to the next one without it. Leave the cursor. Primary. 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 There we are. Primary. Primary. Primary dark. Let's see. Secondary light. Secondary. Secondary. Oop. Secondary foreground. Let's see. Secondary light. Secondary. Primary foreground. Primary. Secondary. Secondary foreground. Primary dark foreground. Primary. Secondary. The only reason I'm not doing a blind find and replace is a lot of these I want to individually evaluate on what's being done where. Secondary foreground. And I might get to the point where I trust it enough at some point, but I am not there yet. Dark foreground. Primary dark foreground. Primary. Secondary. Secondary foreground. Primary. Secondary. Secondary. secondary, 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 boom. And then paper is background. Let's see. Primary light, primary, primary foreground, primary light, primary foreground, do light foreground, I think. Primary. Maybe I should spend a little time and write that PowerShell script. I just, oh man, I just wonder. I'm still really on the fence. I've been bitten enough times by just regexing, changing up my repo that I'm a little gun shy. Let's see here. Light foreground, primary. Primary, light foreground, primary, 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 primary. Okay, I think I'm at the point where I'm going to trust this. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to hunt this literal string. Turn off regular expression match. We are going to drop in let's see. Primary. Place all. This is going to be a lot of changes. Well, it's late enough. I've had my Mountain Dew. We're doing it. Oh, shoot. I didn't want to change it everywhere, did I? We'll fix this in a moment. I didn't want to change all projects. Conveniently, I'll just hit save all and then revert the directories I don't want. So there's that. So we're gonna go there. Start closing down everything. Clock, is this clock? Yeah. So it opened a few windows. Okay, let's come up here and collapse this. So I do not wish to change discard all changes in folder. Discard all changes in folder. Because part of not wanting to change the demo apps yet is not wanting to I want to have some way of validating that I can put these changes in and my demo app should keep working with the old brushes just fine. Okay, so that was a big bang change. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Primary hue dark brush. So we're going to do this one next. I'm going to go here And we're going to go current project rather than everywhere. And primary, this is primary dark. And then is there a option for not opening up all? Yeah, don't keep modified files open. Go. Okay. Okay, so we can do this one next. And I feel weird about this. We're doing it, but... Okay, so this is secondary light. Okay, I probably should have even limited it to just down to XAML files. Whatever. Humid. So this is just secondary because the middle one we don't add a suffix to. Okay, I'm going to move you to the side here. And humid foreground brush. So we're going to grab this guy. Bring my fine window back on. So this is going to now be primary. It's mid, so foreground. Place all. Okay, so this is secondary foreground. Yeah, this is gonna bite me. I just know it. But it's also probably gonna save time. Okay. Dark foreground. So this becomes primary dot dark dot foreground. Okay. 9 occurrences. Go back at the top. Okay, so that handled clock. Close that, and we'll just keep going down. Dynamic resource. So, material design checkbox disabled. So this is a case where I think I don't want to change. Okay, hold on. What's going on here? Oh, I see. Those are separate. Okay, so this one is using a brush from a different control because this is the color picker and it's leveraging the checkbox disabled brush. So what is this going on? It's going on the grip. What is the grip control inside of here? It's an ellipse. So this is the thumb on a slider. So I think we're going to create another brush here. And I'm trying to decide what the appropriate, because this is a custom control of ours. Slider, I think we call it, let's go here. So we need a new section, CH public class color picker brushes, public color, and then this guy here is going to be the slider thumb disabled, I think is the easiest way to say it. Yeah. Slider thumb disabled. Okay, so that will go there. We need to add it up here. This becomes public color picker brushes, color picker, get and new, something like that, and start at the top and work our way down all three places. So color picker gets object initializer, gets old theme, and this was going to come across from what previously was checkbox disabled. That's fine. Checkbox disabled is the previous brush. We're not going to propagate that WAT forward. Okay, so this becomes, rather than chip, color picker, slider thumb disabled. This goes here, and then down here we do color picker gets object initializer, get color, and then this becomes, this goes here, that goes like that, and now we go boom, like that and like that. Okay, and this is going to be the same one. Is that really the only dynamic resources in here? Okay, boom, combo box, close that one up. I may have done this one already. I initially started doing different things. Material design shadow brush. Where the heck? That wasn't a theming brush, was it? Find all. Oh. That is interesting. That is very interesting. I'm going to leave myself a note here. Should these be theme brushes? Okay, because we now have a spot where we could put these. I suspect the answer is yes, but right now we are not chasing those. Okay, so this is now checkbox disabled, and this is another case where I want to do it. So there's got at least one usage of checkbox disabled. Second usage. So this is, one was set on the down arrow on the combo box, and then what is set on the border. I think I'm going to do it as foreground disabled, I think is the best way to say this. So this is combo box, so we're going to come in here. Do we have one yet for combo box? Nope, so we're going to create one. Let's see, public class combo box brushes. And this is where I expect that this area is going to build out a lot. So, foreground disabled. here, public combo box brushes, combo box. Why am I not? Did I not name it correctly? Combo box brushes. That's now fixed. Back to the top and do it again. Combo box, object initializer, foreground disabled, old theme, and this was checkbox disabled again. That's what the old one was. So we'll forward that one in, but obviously we don't propagate the WAT. Move it forward. Oh, so I've now used this term a handful of times, and it's going to be something that shows up. It's going to be something that shows up on my user group talk too. Anyone not familiar with the term WAT, you can look it up on your favorite dictionary of choice, or if you're a programmer, that video. There's a lot of pure gold in that. Just FYI. Okay, back to what we were doing. Let's see. I occasionally go through and just rewatch that video every so often because there's just so much goodness in there, and it brings me such joy. I get way too much joy out of bad code, and it just makes me laugh every time. Okay, and foreground disabled, get color, and then this becomes this. Boom. Okay, so we're going to come back over here and go with disabled there. There's a lot in here. I just realized I want to go backwards. Boom. Okay. Now let's go forward. Forward. That one's fine. Let's see. Okay, so material design paper. This is one I think we can do a find and replace on. Okay. Paper is background. Okay, so this is using the text box inactive border. So I think we're going to propagate this onto a new brush. Yeah, because there's a lot shared between various controls of combo box, text box. Let's see, password box, combo box, text box, date picker, and time picker. All share some common themes because all of those controls kind of have this common, I've got a box I can type into portion of them. So, but I don't want them necessarily sharing a brush name. They can share a brush look, but not a brush name. So text inactive border. So what did we call the one on text box? Outline inactive border, and I assume that's what this one is as well, is the outline style, right? Has outline field true. So yes, so I want to add that to combo box. Outline inactive border. Back to the top. Outline and active border, and this initially came from text area in active border. So that goes like that. Come down to the next one. Change that one over. And let's see, combo box. Outline and active border. Outline and active border goes there. Okay, so actually we should probably just grab that string while I'm here. That is going to go in place there. Validation airbrush. I believe this is another one. That can be auto replaced. Let me double check. Yeah, so that one can be replaced with that. So we can do a find replace all on these. Replace. And this one is going to be that brush. Place all. 28 of those down. Okay. That one's done. That one's done. Material design body. I thought I did this one already. Did I not? Let's not have. Brush. Foreground. Okay. This one should have a bunch of usages. Yeah, that sounds about right. Primary hue light. This is another one we can do a full replace on. Let's see here. So this is primary light. Replace all. Just gonna hit replace all one more time just to make sure, because I don't know why it popped that other thing. This one is going to be very similar, except for it is going to be light foreground. Okay, so I should do this and continue my hunt. Secondary light foreground, we can replace on this one too. Let's see, secondary light foreground, place all. Clearly not used much. Boom, secondary, secondary, secondary dark. Dark. And then there's the foreground one for it. Foreground. Boom. So this one here is actually a unique one that I don't have a replacement for. There are 5 brushes I found that are like this, that are not part of the theming. And I don't know how long they've existed, and I want to kill them. Just don't know. I've got a to-do item for it. Let's see, text box border. So I do not want to do this. I would like a new theme brush. So let's go back and look at the text box one. I would like to do this and add it to the combo box. And then back to the top, combo box, border gets old theme from text box border. Gonna clean that guy up. And then we're gonna come down here, and I've also been trying to alphabetize these for what little it's worth. I haven't been overly diligent at it, but there's something elegant about having them alphabetized to make them easier to find. Let's see, border. Just grab that while I'm here. Boom. There. Text field. So this is the filled style. Filled, not field. Yeah, that's not confusing at all. So it looks like that one. Like I said, there's a lot of overlap between these, so I'm not exactly surprised that I'm putting these ones in. Back to the top, do it again. Actually, let's move this up. Let's see, old theme. Let's see here. This is text field box background. Like that. And then we'll continue down. Combo box. And this will be filled background. Background. Let's see, combo box. Filled background. That goes like that. That goes like that. Copy over to here. Boom. Then I assume you're the next one. Again, not exactly surprised. Text box, hover background. Like I said, I've done this now a couple times, so it does not shock me when I find the dupes. Let's see, combo box. CDEF, hover background, and that previously came from text field hover background. Grab the T because the T is gonna matter. Boom. Come down here, combo box. Okay. Let's see, this guy here becomes hover background, combo box, hover background. Oh. Boom. This is border now. Border. Shadow brush. And we're back to the beginning. Okay, so that handles combo box. This is the old dark theme resource dictionary, so we don't need to do anything with that. This is data grid combo box. I think what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to commit name brushes through. What was the last one we got down through? Through combo box done. So I'm gonna stop there, I think. And this is sitting out here if anybody wants to take a look, or if that pattern seems easy, if anybody wants to take a crack at it, I definitely accept PRs on it. Just make sure to target back to this branch instead of the other one. And I think with that, I am probably going to sign off. Just as a reminder, Hacktoberfest starts tomorrow. Go sign up. It will be awesome. It will be great. Obviously, a bunch of my repos already have the Hacktoberfest tag on them. Feel free to pick something up, work on it. Like I said, if anybody is interested in potentially pairing with me on stream to get your pull requests in, I am happy to help people just work through issues, get pull requests open. Makes it easy, especially if you happen to pick one of my repos that you want to contribute back to. You can get your pull request accepted really rapidly if I pair with you. So makes it easy to get stuff done. So with that, I'm going to say happy coding. I'll see everyone next time. Have a good night.